it never ends, right? Like it's always something. Your phone's buzzing, emails are coming in, you're on all these different platforms. Just this constant need to be connected.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost become the default. So when that idea of just being alone comes up, it feels, I don't know, like a little off, like almost like a warning sign.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, you're going to end up lonely, isolated.
That's such a good point. It's like we've been conditioned to think that way.
Yeah.
You know, that solitude equals something bad. And I think because of that, we just don't see all the positives that can come from it.
Right. It's like there's this whole other side to being alone that we just don't talk about. And that's really what this whole deep dive is all about today. Like really looking at what's good about being alone. And we've got some fascinating research here, some material that really challenges that whole being alone is bad idea. So we're going to try to define what solitude really is and how it's actually different from like feeling lonely.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, those two things get mixed up all the time.
All the time.
And I think what's so compelling about all the research we have here is just how many positives there are to solitude. Like you get so much more clarity when you step away from the noise for a bit. You can really spark creativity. It helps you understand yourself so much better. And there's even evidence that it's actually good for your mental health. So we're talking like a better you, but also you just see the world in a whole new way.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. Where do we even start? Like, how do we actually define solitude? What is it really? And how is it different from just feeling lonely? That's a big one, I think.
I think it's a huge difference. And the research really spells it out. Loneliness is all about how you're feeling. You know, that sense of being disconnected, like nobody gets you. You're not wanted. It often comes from feeling like you don't have enough like meaningful connections with people. Solitude, on the other hand, is just about being physically alone. But the difference is there's no negative feelings attached to it. Something you choose. It's time with yourself, you know, to think things over, recharge, whatever you need.
So it's not about how many people are around. It's about how you feel about being alone. Like, do you see it as a good thing or are you like worried about being left out?
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is this whole being alone thing isn't new. It's not some trendy self-help thing. Throughout history, so many super smart, important people made it a point to spend time alone.
It's true. Our research mentions some huge names. There's definitely this connection between like deep thinking and being alone.
And what's interesting is they weren't hiding from the world. Take Einstein and Virginia Woolf, for example. They were very much in the world, but they knew that to think deeply and come up with new ideas, they needed that time away from everything. They really show us that solitude isn't about rejecting the world. It's about engaging with it in a more thoughtful way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've established what solitude is and that it's got some pretty serious historical backing. Now let's get to the good stuff. The psychological benefits. Where do we even start? What's the impact of spending time alone?
So the first thing is self-discovery. Like, how can you really figure yourself out when you're always around other people, you know, dealing with their stuff?
Right.
It's like trying to hear something whispered when everyone's shouting.
All that outside noise just drowns out what's going on inside.
Right.
You end up reacting to everything around you instead of thinking about what you really want.
Exactly. But when you're alone, you get that quiet, no distractions. You can actually examine your thoughts, feelings, desires, and you don't have everyone else's opinions in your ear. It can be a powerful thing.
Yeah. I mean, you might realize you've been chasing goals that aren't really yours, you know, things you think you should be doing. It could be your career, your relationships. Like the research mentions examples of people realizing they're in the wrong job or that some of their relationships are more harmful than helpful.
Yeah. It's like finally seeing things for what they are. And I think it comes down to this. Solitude helps you separate who you are from everyone else. It helps you build your own identity, which is so important for growth. You can't really move forward in a way that feels right if you don't know who you are.
Totally. So being alone helps us understand ourselves better. What about creativity? That's something people always talk about.
Well, there's a clear link between solitude and creativity.
Yeah.
When your mind isn't busy processing everything going on around you, it can wander. It can make connections between things that might seem totally random, and that's where the new ideas come from. It's like your mind finally has space to play.
It's like you're giving your brain a break from its usual routine so it can come up with something new, right? Like the research mentions J.K. Rowling. She came up with the idea for Harry Potter on a train by herself. Just a quiet moment that sparked something huge.
Exactly. And then there's Isaac Newton. He did some of his most important work when he was basically in isolation during a really chaotic time. You know, no distractions, just pure focus. And that's often where those big breakthroughs come from.
Yeah, if you're constantly bombarded with stuff, you probably don't have the mental energy to make those creative connections. Okay, so let's talk about mental health. This is something that affects everyone. How does spending time alone play into our emotional well-being?
This is so important. Social interaction is key, but the research is really clear that being on all the time is exhausting. Solitude is like an antidote. It gives your nervous system a break. Your mind can finally relax, recharge. There are even studies that show spending time alone can lower your cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your mind and your emotions.
Exactly. And the research shows that people who spend quality time alone tend to be less anxious and generally happier. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop needing other people to tell you you're okay. You build a kind of inner strength.
So it's about self-acceptance rather than needing everyone else to like you.
Yeah, the inner stability is what real emotional well-being is all about.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychological benefits, which are really compelling. The research also mentions some more practical benefits, like real-world stuff. Let's dig into those.
Definitely. One of the big ones is decision-making. Think about it. You're facing a big choice. Everyone's got an opinion. Your friends, family, people at work. Even social media is telling you what to do. It's overwhelming.
You can get so caught up in what everyone else thinks you should do or what seems cool that you forget to listen to yourself.
Exactly. But when you're alone, you can finally process things objectively. You can weigh the options without all that outside pressure. The research gives this example of someone thinking about changing careers. They use that time alone to really think about what they're passionate about, what they really want to do. And that helps them make a decision that feels right for them.
That makes sense. Especially these days, everyone's got an opinion and they want you to hear it. What about productivity? Like in our world where we're always working, always connected, it's hard to focus.
It's so true. And solitude is the key to deep focus. We're so used to checking our phones every 5 seconds, emails, notifications, social media. It's like our attention is constantly being pulled in a million directions. But solitude, it's like a safe space where you can shut all that out. You can concentrate. And when you can actually focus, you get way more done and the quality of your work is better.
Bill Gates, right? He does those think weeks where he completely isolates himself to work on big projects. I mean, that's probably not realistic for most people, but it shows how much value someone's super successful places on that uninterrupted time.
Absolutely. Now, most of us can't take a week off to think, but we can all create blocks of time where we shut off the distractions and just focus. It doesn't have to be a whole week. Even short bursts can make a huge difference.
This might sound strange, but the research says that being alone can actually improve your relationships with other people. Like, how does that work?
I know, it seems counterintuitive, but think about it. When you're more self-aware, more secure in yourself, because of all that introspection and growth that comes from solitude, you bring something different to your relationships. You don't need other people to constantly validate you or make you feel whole.
So you're not looking for someone to complete you. You're coming from a place of like already being complete.
Exactly. And solitude also gives you a chance to really think about how you behave in relationships, like what triggers you, how you communicate, maybe some unhealthy patterns you keep repeating. When you become aware of these things, you can start to interact with people in a more mindful and empathetic way.
Wow, that's really insightful. Okay, so we get the benefits. But for someone who's not used to being alone, maybe they even avoid it, how do they start embracing solitude?
It's all about starting small. The research suggests just adding little bits of alone time to your routine, like go for a walk in nature, leave your phone at home, spend 10 minutes writing in a journal each morning, or just sit quietly and observe your thoughts. Don't judge them, just let them come and go. The point is to slowly get used to being with yourself, realize that it can actually be kind of nice.
Like baby steps.
Yeah. And another big one is cutting down on those digital distractions. We're so used to filling every free moment with our phones. But if you want real solitude, you've got to disconnect. Turn off those notifications. Put your phone in another room. Give your mind some space to breathe.
I mean, it sounds easy, but it's probably one of the hardest things to actually do.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But so worth it. Things like mindfulness and meditation can be helpful too. They help you stay present and get comfortable with just being still, which is important if you're not used to being alone with your thoughts.
What about activities? Like, are there things that are good to do by yourself?
For sure. Things you enjoy doing that don't require other people. Reading, writing, painting, playing music, being in nature. When you find those things that you love, solitude stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a treat. The research even mentions solo travel as a way to become more independent and learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, going somewhere new all by yourself, that sounds exciting and scary at the same time.
It definitely pushes you out of your comfort zone. But you learn so much about yourself when you have to navigate new places and challenges on your own. It can be really transformative.
The research also talks about the spiritual and philosophical side of solitude. Why is it so important in so many different traditions and philosophies?
It's incredible, really. Across cultures and throughout history, so many spiritual traditions have seen solitude as the path to inner peace, wisdom, even enlightenment. You've got Buddhist monks going on silent retreats, Christian mystics spending time alone in prayer. It's like they all understood that to connect with something bigger than yourself, you need to step away from the everyday world.
Like, to really understand yourself and where you fit in, you need that space to look inward without all the distractions.
Right. And philosophers like Thoreau, who lived in the woods by himself, and Nietzsche, they both thought solitude was essential for thinking for yourself, coming up with original ideas, and becoming the best version of yourself. They saw it as a way to grow.
So this isn't just some new fad. It's something that's been important to people for a long time. Now, let's be real. A lot of people are afraid of being alone. What does the research say about overcoming that fear?
The research acknowledges that, and it says this fear often comes from associating solitude with bad things, like emptiness, boredom, feeling rejected. Or maybe there are some unresolved issues or feelings you're trying to avoid by staying busy and connected.
So maybe that discomfort with being alone is actually a sign that you need to do some inner work.
Exactly. And the key is to change how you think about solitude. Instead of seeing it as something bad, see it as an opportunity. A chance to reflect, to be creative, to recharge, to grow. It's about changing the story you tell yourself about being alone.
It's about focusing on the good instead of the bad.
Right, and the more you make time for solitude, even little bits at a time, the more comfortable you'll get. Become something you enjoy. Like any skill, you get better with practice.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. So just to sum things up, what are the key takeaways about being alone?
I think the main message is that solitude, when you do it intentionally, has so many benefits. It can make your life so much more fulfilling and meaningful. We talk about how it helps you think more clearly, be more creative, and build that inner strength and resilience. It gives you space to look at yourself honestly and grow, and ultimately it makes you happier.
And it's not about becoming a hermit, right? Like, you don't have to disappear from society.
No, not at all. It's about getting to know yourself, liking who you are, and then bringing that stronger, more confident self to your relationships with other people. It's about connecting with yourself so you can connect with others in a deeper way.
So to wrap things up, here's something to think about. In a world where everyone wants you to be connected all the time and needs likes and followers, maybe being okay with being alone, even enjoying it, is more than just a preference. Maybe it's a super important skill, something we all need to learn. So think about that. How could adding a little more solitude to your life change things for the better? Maybe in ways you haven't even imagined yet.